Hey, everybody, Patrick Barano here. I'm the host of the podcast Learning from Leaders, as well as the CEO of Emory Leadership Group. And the topic today really is around clear expectations and how those impact conflict. And I see it more and more in regards to not only personal relationships, but I would say organizational relationships, employee disengagement versus employee excellence. And I do think that when we don't have clear expectations, we open ourselves up to conflict. And there are a number of different places that I've sort of checked off in terms of where clear expectations become really important. Job performance, first off. If I, as the employee, don't know how I'm being evaluated, what my performance is being measured against, there are many opportunities where I may think I'm doing a great job, and it may not be until the end of the year when we go through a performance review that I find out that what I was expected to do or how I was being evaluated. I had no idea that those things were going on, and I know as silly as that sounds, I hear it happening over and over again. I will tell you personally, I know in one of my last roles, when it came time to do my year-end review, I was shocked in terms of some of the things that I was being evaluated on that, quite frankly, never came up during the year, and it caused a lot of conflict. When we're talking about performance, we need to be very clear in terms of what the measures are, as well as what we define as acceptable or good or excelling in terms of performance. The next one is, from an employee standpoint, can be around promotion. When we don't have clear expectations in terms of people that are looking to get promoted within an organization, we can often run into a lot of conflict, and also it can create a lot of disengagement. I remember I was working with a controller of an organization, and this individual was in conversations with the CFO about taking over. He was going to be the next person that was going to be in line for the CFO role, yet didn't really have any idea in terms of the time frame when that might happen, as well as from a credential standpoint, did he have all of the buckets or all of the things checked off that needed to be checked off so that when that CFO decided that they were going to retire, that this person did in fact have all of the pieces and know clearly what was needed to happen for them to take on that role. As it turns out, in that particular situation, and this is a number of years ago, but I kept in touch with that controller, and the individual ended up leaving the organization because there just was no sort of clear understanding in terms of what this person was going to need to do to make sure that they were in line for that role. The next can be around job responsibility. I just had this conversation the other day with somebody that was speaking about how frustrated they were in the role that they were in as a director, and they were doing parts of their boss's job that they felt it was unfair that they were having to do these roles. Now, certainly that's something that they would need to address, right? That what is my job function here? What are my responsibilities? Not having a clear understanding of that is really important. What are our roles? Very important. And for this individual, we discussed that this person really needed to go back to their boss to push that agenda in some regards, is to say, what is my role here? What am I responsible for? What are you responsible for? Because by not having that, here was somebody that felt as though they were being taken advantage of. They were being asked to do things that really sort of weren't in their job description. And not that this person wasn't willing to do things that weren't in their job description, but felt more like their boss was sort of passing the buck and was having them do things that quite frankly they didn't want to do. Another area that it becomes really important when we're talking about hiring, right? Having clear expectations. And I mean this from the standpoint of, before somebody comes on board in terms of your organization is being very clear in regards to what the expectations of this role is and this person. What is going to be expected of them? And again, I can't tell you how many times I've run into individuals that are frustrated a year into their job because they're like, this is nothing like I had expected it to be. I think it's one of the numbers that I saw was that in the first year, somebody is 10 times more likely to leave an organization than at any other point in their career. And I would argue that that probably goes back to you get into a role, you maybe were promised or you remember certain things that you thought were going to be the most appealing. And all of a sudden you get into the role and you're like, wait a minute, this is nothing like what I was promised or what I signed up for or what the expectation was. And again, I think when we have clear expectations, it allows us to avoid a lot of that conflict because the person before they come on board, they know these are your responsibilities. This is what you're going to be doing. Maybe even this is how you advance out of this role. But we need to have those conversations. The next is around team goals, right? When we have team conflict, oftentimes my experience has been is that there aren't clear expectations in regards to what responsibilities are for people on the team and what do we want to do as a team? What are we all going to rally behind as a team to have clear expectations? We need those. Organizational goals, organizational values, being clear on those from an organizational standpoint. I was working with an organization that some of the decisions they were making were, when we pulled their values up, were not in alignment with what their values were. There was an opportunity here to be very clear. This is what we stand for. And then when we state what we stand for, it makes it much easier for us to take a step back and say, is the decision I'm making right now in alignment with what our values are? Or is my behavior right now in line with what our stated values are? We need to be able to do that. Again, going back and forth. Coworker expectations. Again, what do we need from each other as coworkers? There's a form that I remember using years ago, and it was something along the lines of the best of us. The purpose of this form was really to say, I am at my best when this happens. I'm at my worst when this happens. And then this is what you can expect from me in this role. And this is what I need from you. And it's a great opportunity for coworkers or a manager and a staff member to both fill this form out, right? What is it that you get the worst of me when this happens? Or this is how you get the best out of me, or this is what you can expect from me as an employee. And this is really what I need from you as either my counterpart or as my manager. Again, we're setting clear expectations. What do we need from each other? We can bring this all the way back to personal relationships too. Those relationships where we don't have clear expectations on what we need from each other to make the relationship work, we're going to run into problems because at some point there's probably going to be a disconnect. I'm going to do something that is out of alignment with what you think is acceptable in this relationship. You might do the same, all because we didn't have a clear understanding of what the expectations are. Now, I'm going to say right now that clear expectations, as important as they are, they're only half of this equation. In the model that I use called cables, the S in this model is around specifics. And what specifics talk about is, one, clear expectations. But the other part of clear expectations is what I would call productive accountability. And not just accountability, because when oftentimes when I hear that word accountability, it has a punitive tone to it, right? When you are told you're going to be held accountable for something, generally you don't say, oh, good, this feels like a good thing. It's punishment. Productive accountability is about ownership, is that we take ownership in what we have agreed on as clear expectations. The further we get away from not following through or adhering to those clear expectations, again, we run a high likelihood of we're going to be in conflict when that happens. So from a job performance standpoint, if we agree on what the clear expectations are, but I as a manager don't follow through when I see that you're not adhering to those clear expectations, if I don't call you out on those things and have a discussion about that with you, again, from an accountability standpoint, productive accountability, then what I do is I open the door. From an influence standpoint, we call it foot in the door. But what that does is it provides an opportunity for things to simply slide at that point. And when we think about that, what tends to happen is whoever that individual is that is has that clear expectation, that employee, they start to believe that the rules really don't matter. This what we said the expectation was. I've got some leeway here. There's some cushion here. The problem with what that does to the rest of the team is it really sends a signal out, maybe, that this person gets special treatment. Rules don't apply to this person. It doesn't work. We need to have productive accountability, ownership of the clear expectations for us to really sort of make this thing whole and really become the strongest individuals we can. So again, from a standpoint of job promotion, we can say the same thing here, right? We can have clear expectations, but if there isn't accountability on either side, then we're going to run into problems. If I haven't followed through on what I agreed to do in terms of certifications or performance levels, then I can't really expect to get that next promotion. Now, the flip side of that is true as well. If I've moved through all of the steps that you have suggested I need to do to be in line for this promotion and I don't get it, there probably are going to be problems. There's going to be conflict because if we had clear expectations, if I was doing all the things you told me to do, and then you don't give me the job, we're going to have problems. Same thing with job responsibility, right? That here are the roles. If you start to put extra things on me and hold me to those, even though we've had clear expectations, again, problems. Team goals, again, we all say we're going to do this project. We all agree to certain roles that we're going to play in this. If we don't hold each other to those, adhering to those, take ownership in those, then the team is not going to succeed or be as successful as it could be if we all do our parts. And we need to hold each other to that. Same thing with organizational goals or values. We really need to hold each other to that. And then lastly, again, we can say the same thing about coworkers. When we're not doing that, when we set the clear expectations, but then don't create ownership around those and hold each other accountable to those, we're not really going to be at our best, and we're going to open ourselves up to conflict continually. So I hope you found this episode helpful. Again, one of the areas that I see as a root cause most often for conflict is around lack of clear expectations. I'll challenge you. Take a look at situations that you're in, maybe ones that aren't going that well, and look at the perspective of clear expectations. Where are you? Do you have clear expectations? Were there ever clear expectations? And if there weren't, is there a way that you can get back to that place of creating them and then holding each other accountable? Until the next episode, I hope you're able to go out there and also